Well, and in fact, one of the competitors ended up getting like a $50 million fundraise, like when we were a year into it. And there's two reactions. Then one is like, oh well, I guess we should go do something else. The other is, well, that means everybody's going to want to do this. So if we don't think they can get to everybody and our technology is good, there's got to be some market segment that works for us. And that actually did drive investors to talk to us and drove partnerships and drove everything else. So you can't get dispirited just because there's a big elephant in your big giant space.
So you did come into this though with some founder DNA, pretty significant. And in fact, you co-founded a company that might be one of my favorite names and favorite words on the planet. You co-founded a company called Quack, and I think you were eventually acquired by AOL. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And so Quack was a company that was basically Siri over a 1-800 number before they really had smartphones. It was when the early Palm data devices were out. And so the way we got the company going was I was actually in a store buying a mountain bike. And I was going, gosh, I wish I knew how much this bike was online because this seems kind of steep. And I thought, I wish I could just say specialized rock hopper, and get a price from 5 different places. Yeah. And there were tools that did that on the web, but I didn't want to go home. And I thought, that's probably doable now. And that naive approach eventually led to building a team with a few people I knew and saying, well, let's go build this, and building a prototype, and eventually, acquisition from AOL. And so that was the story behind that. I was a first-time entrepreneur who just wanted to solve a problem.
Well, let's talk about the fact that the Specialized Rock Hopper is an awesome bike. And that was my first competitive mountain bike way more years ago than I want to talk about. But also, obviously an incredible problem, and one that at the time was really hard to solve well. So clearly you did something right and someone believed in you, but how hard was it for you to rally conviction and belief that this was a solvable problem with the technology of the day?
So I think the key was that the three of us who became the founding team, we built a prototype and showed it working.
Yeah.
And we did that pretty quickly. I mean, there were AI tools for speech recognition you could use. There were tools that could, basically spider websites to collect data. And we built some code that put it together and had a demo. And we had some contacts that one of us had. And we went to them and said, this is really cool. I'd love to use this and help put some money in. And we just kept going from there. But the absolute key in our case was people could see it.
Yeah.
Right? They could actually say something into the phone and get back an answer. And we didn't build the whole price shopping thing. We actually built something simple, which I'm trying to remember, I think it was, what's the weather like? Or where's the nearest Chinese restaurant? It was something like that. And that's what got us started. And people are like, I get it. I can say by voice what I want. It's pretty easy. I get it wherever I am. This feels like it could be valuable. And it was just constantly moving from there.
Well, and it also must have felt just a little bit magical, right? I mean, I think we become so inured to like the pace of change in tech, and we've got cars driving themselves around, which as far as I'm concerned is still sci-fi. It becomes normal, but it's really nice to have that spark of magic of this is really cool.
I think it was, right? Like you could be somewhere and your normal behavior would have been, well, I've got to go home. I got to get to a laptop. I've got to get to my desktop, and then I can search for a while, and then I can get the necessary information. This changed it to, wait, I can just say it what I want. And that was the key that did make it feel really magical to people. And there's this saying, I forgot who said it, that any really smart technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Absolutely.
Right? We just were a smart way to put technology together, which gave a really interesting experience. And we were really ahead of our time. This was 10, 12 years before Siri.
Yeah.
And so that was like, nobody even had thought about this, right? That you could do this.
Well, or the people that had thought about it were sitting on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise or something like that, right? Like, I mean, and like, I think we shouldn't underestimate that connection. I get these questions all the time from people that I work with, from people that are listening to the podcast, that are basically like, how do I rally people around me to see what I see? And that spark of magic, that combining the art of what's possible, like people just kind of knowing what's possible with a little bit of magical inspiration, goes a long way. Because I think we forget that, people are people, human are humans. Yes, you need to be able to prove a business case and generate revenue, but you also need to touch the emotional strings.
You're absolutely right. And you need a proof point that people can really grab onto. So you need a big story. Well, our story was, actually, that's where Quack came from. It was an acronym: Quick Ubiquitous Access to Consumer Knowledge. So that was a crummy acronym.
Speaking of Star Trek-like acronyms.
It was a crummy acronym, but the vision was, you've got a phone in your hand. You can get whatever info you need anytime just by voice.
Yeah.
That was compelling. But then people are like, well, I don't know. Can you even do it? And then you put a phone in their hand and it's like, what's the weather in Toronto, Canada today? And they hear it. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Where's the nearest Chinese restaurant? Here it is. It's like, wow, this is pretty neat. And so then they could start going from that little vision to something much bigger. And so you need the big vision and the concrete proof point.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go the other direction for a minute, though. We talked about some of the things that made this work, that inspired people. Let's go back to the early days of Quack. What was hard? Where did you just beat your head against the wall and start thinking, I can't believe they don't get it, or I can't believe I can't make this happen?
So we pitched, after we got some angel investment, we pitched probably 40 VCs.
Yeah.
And all of them said, this is just stupid. You're not going to get anywhere. You guys have no experience. In fact, one we were pitching a month before we actually closed our sale. And he said, you'll never get anywhere. And even if you do, it's only like a $200 million thing. I'm not interested. Right. So I thought, okay, that was really hard, is hearing no. It's rejection. It's asking every girl at the dance to dance, and every single one says no. What do you do? And so what we did is we just kept plugging along. We found people who believed in us just enough to take us to the next step. So we got some investment. Those investors helped us find the next level of investment. And we just worked our way along to just have enough. We never had the massive round, although I think at the end we were close, but we just got enough. And we got a little bit lucky in the process, where I'd done an interview and it was on the radio, and an AOL exec heard it and said, man, if I could just listen to my email, that'd be really cool. It's like, that's another thing you could do, right? And in fact, our AOL user base, we need premium services. We need to get them beyond the dial-up. This is beyond the dial-up in a way that might resonate. And it was somebody who believed in us that way that ultimately led to the sale.
How'd you keep yourselves going at that time? I mean, it can be, like you said, it can be dispiriting, right? To get the nose.
I think we thought the idea was really good. Yeah. And actually there were some other companies that started doing it as well. So we're like, we're not the only ones with this idea. There's others out there. There's a lot of potential places we could partner to get scale. We're making progress. It still has a wow factor. And the thing was, all this happened within 18 months. Right. So it was really, really fast. And I think if it had been a few years or 2 or 3 years, it might have been harder, but we saw progress, and let's keep pushing and see where it goes.
Let's keep pushing. Well, and the emergent competitors are always interesting, right? Because sometimes I talk to folks that get dispirited by that, they're like, oh, there's a million people, they're catching up. But the flip side of that is that's a proof point that you're onto something, right?
Well, and in fact, one of the competitors ended up getting like a $50 million fundraise, like when we were a year into it. And there's two reactions then. One is like, oh, well, I guess we should go do something else. Yeah. The other is, well, that means everybody's going to want to do this. Mm-hmm. So if we don't think they can get to everybody and our technology is good, there's got to be some market segment that works for us.
Welcome to FOMO City.
That actually did drive investors to talk to us, and drove partnerships, and drove everything else. So, you can't get dispirited just because there's a big elephant in your big giant space.